so glad to have been invited here today. Sister Monica. Yeah, let's give a big round of applause to Sister Monica. Brother Lamont Lilly. I was proud to be one of the 55 California registered voters to sign on as elector to make sure that that brother and sister were on the ballot in California. I was told that there were going to be a lot of young people here. That wasn't a lie. I'm suffering from a little jet lag, but that's gone. I got plenty of energy. One of the things that I want to talk about first is that my activism started in the late 60s, to be more specific, in 1967 when I was a student at San Francisco State College. 1968, I was a member of the Black Student Union Central Committee. We led one of the longest student strikes in American history, over 4.5 months. I want you to excuse me if I sound a little bit like a lecturer tonight, but I have to give a message to you young people to put some things in perspective. I'm going to read something to you. Quote, "One of the most effective confrontations in the history of the United States student movement, the San Francisco State College strike will no doubt serve as a precedent for future campus disruption. The strike has been unique in many ways, differing completely from the events at Columbia University in 1968 or the recent disruptions at Cornell and Harvard. The San Francisco State College strike witnessed the formation of new alliances, the use of new tactics, and the mobilization of unprecedented support. The effectiveness of the strike can be attributed primarily to the leadership of the Black Student Union." Now, when I tell you who wrote this, you're going to be surprised. This was not in a bourgeois newspaper or a leftist publication or the Black Panther Party newspaper. What I read to you is an excerpt from the Riots, Civil and Criminal Disorders hearings before the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations of the Committee on Government Operations, the United States Senate, 91st Congress, First Session, Part 22, page 571. If you really want to find out how effective our struggle is, our enemies will let us know. This is where my foundation started. I'm a third-generation longshoreman. I'm retired as of July 2016, but not from the struggle. But what you should know about that 1968 strike, it was about the establishment of a Black Studies and the School of Ethnic Studies. It was about open enrollment for Black and students of color as well as working class students. It was about financial aid. It was a workers' program with a coalition of students, teachers, and the community. You don't engage in a 4.5 month struggle as a spontaneous action, young people. It takes organization. Spontaneity has its place. But remember that there is a difference between protest movement building, and resistance. We need all of that. And I'm speaking to you who've been termed the millennials, because you are the ones who will be in the vanguard of the struggle. You have the most to lose and the most to gain. Because a nation that does not invest in its young people has no future. For those of you who don't know what longshoremen do, we are some of the most important workers in the global economy. The cars you drive, the computers and the handheld devices that come from Asia, the tennis shoes that you're wearing, the food that you eat in some instances, all come off of a ship. Some of the first longshoremen in the country were enslaved black people. Some of the first organized black workers in the country were longshore workers. It's critical because the bosses need to get the cargo off the ship so that the consumer can buy it. That's one of the reasons why the longshore unions, there's two of them, the ILA on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast, the ILW on the West Coast. We are critical to the global economy, and we are the two strongest industrial unions in the United States. What many of you may not understand is that it was the working class that made it possible for us to have the 8-hour workday. How many of you know about May Day? Raise your hand. That's the real Labor Day. Workers who have put their lives on the line. Workers who've been lynched. Not only black and brown people, but union organizers were also subjected to lynching. Why is that? Because the bosses understood that if they did not control the workers, that there would be rebellions, insurrections, disrupting production. The ILW history, starting in 1934, when San Francisco was the #1 port city in the world. Longshoremen wanted to end the shape-up where they had to beg the bosses for a job, do such things as provide kickbacks, nepotism, discrimination. It was very dehumanizing. And if you ever have a chance to watch a film by the name of On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando, you'll get some idea of what the shape-up was like. In 1934, the entire West Coast was shut down. There was a man by the name of Harry Bridges who was an immigrant from Australia, who was a rank and file leader and who stepped forward to put the union on a whole new course. There were many challenges during that time, and one of which was the fact that black people weren't allowed to work on the waterfront in large numbers. So they got their chances to work during a strike. It would be called scabs. But it's hard to call people scabs during the Depression who were trying to feed their families and who were trying to overcome the racism of the trade union movement to work. But it was people like Bridges and others who realized that the fortunes of the white working class were inextricably linked to the black working class. And they could not have won that strike without the support of the black community. So what did they do? They went to the black churches and appealed to the black community that if they would support the strike and not cross the picket line, that they would become a part of the Union. And it is for that reason, one of the main reasons why that struggle was won. And black people in San Francisco are a part of the largest membership of African Americans, longshoremen on the entire West Coast. Now, our union has Sister Brenda Stokely. Would you stand up, Brenda? Sister Brenda Stokely has characterized the ILWU Local 10 as a labor union that has a revolutionary character. Yeah. And I would agree with that. And let me just tell you why. You can go back to 1935 when Mussolini and Italy invaded Ethiopia. There was cargo being loaded specifically to Italy. It was nickel, brass, and other such commodities. Longshoremen refused to handle that cargo, to resist that action. In 1939, when Japan invaded Manchuria, ILWU Local 10 members refused to handle scrap iron that was destined for Japan. We opposed the war in Korea, the first union to oppose the war in 1965 in Vietnam. This is what Sister Brenda Stokely talks about when she says revolutionary character. This is a union that is committed to democracy, militancy, and not afraid at all to speak out on issues of foreign policy. It is world-renowned for its action of refusing to work South African cargo for 11 days in 1984. What you need to understand is that the power of the working class is at the point of production. Yeah. It's okay to sit in on Wall Street. It's okay to take over freeways. But if you really want to stop the machine, you do it at the point of production. This is why this is how we got the 8-hour workday. This is how we got weekends. This is how we got medical care. This is how we got vacations. But something has happened. We've moved away from that radicalism. That's right, sir. And we need to re-embrace that radicalism, in particular you young people, because that's going to be the only way that you're going to have a future that was as bright as your grandparents who came out of World War II and were responsible for making the real deal a reality, because Franklin Delano Roosevelt was afraid that there was going to be a socialist revolution in the United States of America, and he told the ruling class and the capital that they would have to make concessions. Social Security, unemployment insurance, WPA, and a host of other programs that were put in place that are now under attack. I want to fast forward to the last 10 years and my association with the Workers' World Party. In 2004, the ILWU Local 10 initiated the Million Worker March movement. Can I have everyone to stand in the room who either supported the Million Worker March or attended? Would everybody please stand? Thank you. That's when I first became acquainted with Sister Monica, Larry Holmes, Cheryl LaBash, Sharon Black, Andre Powell, and so many, many others. Brother Chris Silvera from Teamster Local 808. Brother Raymond Nat Turner, Ziggy. I know Brother Steve Gillis is not here tonight, is he? Tomorrow. Steve Kirschbaum. Yeah. These were Johnny Stevens. Met all of those brothers and sisters and comrades through the Million Worker March. The Million Worker March was a very historical movement because we had to go up against the labor movement and the Democratic Party. Oh yes, that's when, for you millennials, some of you were probably just being born at that time. Let me read something to you about the AFL-CIO when they got wind that there was going to be a Million Worker March. To all state federation and central labor councils, from Marilyn Snyderman, Director of Field Operations Department, AFL-CIO, you may have seen a reference to the Million Worker March being called for by a number of local unions, individuals, and organizations in mid-October. It was October 17th, 2004. While we may agree with many of the aims of the march, the AFL-CIO is not a co-sponsor of this effort, and we will not be devoting resources or energies toward mobilizing for a Washington demonstration this fall. Rather, we are completely focused on the critical importance of grassroots organizing for the national election scheduled for November 2nd. John Kerry was the candidate. We think it's absolutely crucial that we commit the efforts of our movement to removing George Bush from office. Well, as you know, Kerry lost and George Bush won. Electing candidates to Congress and the state and local level who are committed to working family issues. We believe that the efforts of the entire labor movement need to be focused on the election. We encourage all state federations and area councils, simple labor councils, not to sponsor or devote resources to the demonstration in Washington, but instead to remain focused on the election and devote all mobilization efforts to grassroots political campaign efforts between now and election. That gives you some idea as to how Donald Trump got elected. Whose interest does the Democratic Party represent? Not ours. Our response to that, I'll summarize, was that we told John Sweeney, who was the head of the AFL-CIO, that they didn't even show the respect of contacting the organizers of the Million Worker March movement. They just sent out this document. Do you understand the power of the working class? Following the Million Worker March, you know what happened in the labor movement? There was a split. Change to win. The Teamsters broke off, the building trades, because they were telling us, oh, this is the wrong time. Do the Million Worker March next year. It's never the right time for the working class. We have to demand it. I want to talk about something that's very important to me, and that is the question of workers organizing and mobilizing in their own name, independent of the Republican and Democratic Party. Well, that's pretty much easy to do because the Democratic Party is in shambles right now. There's no need to talk about resuscitating it and changing it. You cannot revolutionize a bourgeois, corporate, Pentagon-supported institution. It's dead and it's stinking. We got to build something else, brothers and sisters. This is an opportunity. But what I want to call your attention to is this. We've been on the cutting edge of some very important struggles. Talked about the issue concerning Palestine. I'm glad that not only did we not work a vessel from Palestine that was sent from Israel, but we refused to work the terminal for 4 whole days. And the shipping company, which is named Zimlines, won't even send any ships to Oakland now. I'm going to wrap it up. I just got a note to say, please wrap up. I had a 2-hour speech and only 8 minutes to give it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And